Okay, so I'm going to call the governance committee meeting to order. It is now 5:55, and we now have quorum because Colin walked in the door, so that's wonderful. Just really quickly, it is the 2nd of April, so it is no longer April Fool's Day, so this is a very this is the real meeting of the governance committee of the Roosevelt Island Operating Corporation. And so I am the chair. My name is Liz Tong. I'm just going to go around, have everybody introduce yourselves. You're next.
Conway Eckbo, board member.
Margie Smith, former board member.
Mary Kinane, Chief Operating Officer.
Suzanne Dooley, Assistant General Counsel.
Lana Strucker, Deputy General Counsel.
And also people online, just introduce yourself very quickly. We'll start with
Faye
Megan.
Christian, board member.
Megan?
I wasn't sure who was going to go next. Sorry. Megan Anderson, designee as chair for the board and committee member.
Perfect, then. Lauren? And Jeremy? And
Sure. Jeremy Steckel. I'm a partner at Carter, Ledyard and Milburn, and we've been serving as outside counsel to REOC in connection with these bylaw updates. And my colleague Lauren Chandler can introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Lauren Chandler, and I'm an associate at Carter, Ledyard and Milburn.
okay, so I think everybody else is either a member of the public or staff. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, more than welcome. I think, well, up to you. Is Audrey on? Is Audrey?
Yeah, where's Audrey?
Audrey's here?
Is she? Where? No,
I don't think Audrey's here.
no, there's 9 members and 9 participants, and she's not.
Okay, so, all right, so, okay, so we'll leave it at that. All right, so first order of business is review of the bylaws and what, the latest draft of the bylaws. What we did was we met with CLM 3 times, and we reviewed it, and changes were made, and what I want to do is present the changes. And so, Lauren, can you share, or should we share? How are we gonna do this?
Do you have a screen in the room that you're, oh, there we go.
Okay, there. Okay,
Excuse
so
me,
this,
remove do we need navigation?
Yeah, you can X that out.
okay, so is this the red line, or is this the?
It's
this
a
is
clean
the
version.
This is the clean version. So let's go to the clean version since it's up, okay? All right, fantastic. And for those of you who are here, you actually have a version of the clean version here, yeah? All right, so, so we'll just start with Article 1. So,
Yeah, and Lydia, if I may, I just wanted to say that, you know, just at the highest level, we have been involved with helping to update the bylaws, which were last updated in 2010, to ensure compliance with the various statutes that apply to REOC, best practices, and also just hearing from the governance committee about suggestions and what's actually happening in practice and trying to make the bylaws match the practice and vice versa.
and we are very grateful, Jeremy, thank you so much.
Thank
So
you.
just as a little preamble, there were significant changes to the bylaws from where we were the last time we met as a committee. And the reason for those changes were Jeremy's recommendation, CLM's recommendation that we offload a lot of the text into referring to other documents, so that we don't really have to reiterate things, and then when other laws change, then they change, and we don't have to change our bylaws. I hope that's correct. Jeremy, do you disagree with what I just said?
I don't disagree. Yeah, I mean, in some instances, we want to avoid having bylaws say one thing and another external docs say another thing, and those things can become inconsistent with each other over time. And then other changes, changes to law, just making the references consistent, some defined terms, that sort of drafting matters.
So, so these, Article 1, so I'm just gonna plow on in, okay? If anybody has any objections, please say something. So I'm just gonna read it. Description, Roosevelt Island Operating Corporation is a body, corporate, and political instituting a public benefit corporation, the political subdivision of the state of New York, creating and having the power and functions set forth in Title 35, Article 8 of the New York Public Authorities Law, formerly Chapter 899 and of the laws of 1984, which is known as the Roosevelt Island Operating Corporation Act, in parentheses, the quote-unquote act. Section 2, offices. The principal office of the corporation shall be located on Roosevelt Island in the city, county, and state of New York. The corporation may also have offices at such other place or places within the state of New York as the corporation's board of directors, each a quote-unquote board member or quote-unquote director, and collectively the quote-unquote board, may from time to time designate. Section 3, seal. The official seal of the corporation shall be in the form of a circle and shall bear the name of the corporation and the year of its creation. Such seal may also include such other insignia as may be approved by the board. So I am assuming that nobody's going to have a problem with Article 1. If anybody has a problem with Article 1, please say.
Just to want to clarify, are we going to read the entire bylaws text?
Yeah, that was my question too. I think we'll be here a while if we're doing that.
Yeah. Okay, so Article 2 then. So do we want to go over and see if anybody has, we can just have you guys read on your own, but for those of you who have read, especially the committee members, and have reviewed this, anybody have any issues with Article 2?
It may be helpful to have outside counsel call out the changes, the significant changes for each
Thank you.
section,
Okay.
and then we
yeah,
can
deadline.
discuss those.
Set it up.
Yeah, I tried to go over the red line, but it was like the whole entire thing was redlined. So it was,
Right, some are, some of the are just like
Minor.
Yeah, some of
minor
it's
typo
absolutely
things,
nothing,
and
yeah.
others are like actual substance.
but was there anything, I mean, it's been so long since we saw this last. Was there any major change that we wanted in here that either didn't make the cut or got massaged in some way?
Was there, Jeremy, I think we had requested a bullet point of the changes per each section. Is that
Yes,
something we can?
that we were.
Did we get that? And if so, we should pull that up.
We were asked to provide that by Friday, so we are working on it, and that's going to be addressed, I think, to the board and the governance committee.
I see.
So, I was asked to join yesterday, and so I haven't really prepared anything, but I'm happy to try and talk through the substantive changes, if that would be useful.
I think that'd be very helpful, yes.
Thank you. You'll cut down on the length of the meeting. Thank you, we appreciate it.
Okay, sure. So, in some cases, when you're looking at the red line, you're seeing just text being moved from to make it a little bit more readable or consolidated to make it more logical. So in section 1, sorry, I'm not sure who's scrolling, but in section 1, there's really no substantive changes here. This follows the requirements of law. We talk about how the board delegates to internal and external advisors, subject always to the ultimate authority of the board, which is just a principle of good governance. Section 2 really just tracks the statute around representatives to the board who get notice but aren't entitled to vote. Section 3, let's keep going. Okay. This
Okay.
is, sorry, did someone have a comment or question?
No, keep going.
Okay. This is just clarifying that per the statute, there are 2 of your board members who, by virtue of their positions in government, have those roles for so long as they hold those roles. That is not a substantive change. So I would keep going. No changes to section 4. Section 5 tracks the text of the statute and is only more protective of the directors and officers. My sense is that since this wasn't up, since the last time these bylaws were updated in 2010, either the law changed or someone took a less detailed approach back then, but we have just tracked the language of the statute here to make sure that everyone's getting the fullest protection. Okay. You know, you'll see quite a few changes around just board instead of board of directors. That's because we set up that defined term at the outset as Lydia was reading. And so it just cuts down on extra verbiage, but that is not a substantive change. Okay, section 7, I think, is worth talking about for a moment. We heard that it's important to make sure that attendance is good, and that if there's a situation where someone has not made it to a meeting for 3 consecutive meetings and without excuse, you know, at some point you could reach a point where it makes it hard for the governance committee to, or the board, excuse me, to act or achieve quorums. And so we've added this text that if there are 3 unexcused absences, the chair will send a notice or cause the secretary to send a notice to the governor, along with a recommendation as to whether or not the person should be removed from the board. This is because it's ultimately by statute the governor's decision, but you know, it's obviously important to have attendance at board meetings so that they can act. So we've just kind of created this mechanism in section 7. Section 8 is somewhat related around resignation, and we've just added some other kind of standard text that if someone becomes incapacitated or, you know, passes away, they're obviously not going to be a board member anymore, and that the governor will be provided with that notice. Okay, any questions on Article 2 before we move on to Article 3?
We're all good. Are you okay?
Okay, okay, hearing none. Article 3, as it's titled, is about meetings. And I think the existing bylaws from 2010 don't really reflect the reality and practice that REAC sends posts notices publicly, and though board members may hear in advance of that, they are also can be given notice at the same time and in the same way that the public is notified. We also added in, you can see in this second sentence that, you know, in practice, what's happening is that a schedule of board meetings throughout the year is being adopted and circulated. And so we wanted to just update the bylaws from, you know, now 15 years ago to reflect what's happening in reality. So whoever's scrolling can continue scrolling. Okay. And here you can pause here. We've distinguished between special meetings and regular meetings. Regular meetings would be the ones that are set in that schedule that's circulated in advance of the year throughout the year. A special meeting is something different. Okay. This text at the end about being the chairperson shall be responsible for setting the agenda. This is a mechanism that we've put in place here based on requests and input from the governance committee. The ABO guidance on this point says that the chairperson sets the agenda, but for obvious reasons, you know, board members should have some input and a chance to suggest something to be on the agenda, with the chairperson having the ultimate decision. But we've laid out some factors that should be part of the consideration in that determination, and we think this strikes a good balance. Okay, any questions on that section before we go on to, I guess it would be section 2 about notice?
Yeah, I have a question. We're getting to it. Oh, notice of the meetings, we are getting notice to the public. Okay, that's what I was.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is also what I was mentioning before about manner of notice and how it's actually happening in practice. So any questions on this section 2?
Um, So we used to have, the public would be notified, I think it said 3 days in advance. That is out now. Is that what you're saying? Just quiet this thing down. Or is it here and I'm just not seeing it?
I think we refer to the statute here, and I think it's more, I think the statute requires more than 3 days notice. Lada, you're in the room.
Okay,
What's
but
the
I'm just looking for,
Because you reference section 104 of the open meetings law, that's exactly prescribed to give it, I think, 72 hours. So that,
so what we're
Incorporated
saying is
by
instead of having
reference.
it in there,
because there
the
might
open
be
meeting law
changes,
says
yeah.
72
Whatever
hours.
the requirements in the open meetings
Okay,
law. the
got it.
state-
Okay.
Yeah, and I will say, as part of our review, we looked at various other public authorities, and there's varied approaches. We've seen some public authorities where it is a very skeletal approach in the bylaws, where they avoid detail whenever possible and refer to statutes. In part, that's because statutes can change from time to time, and that's one benefit of that approach, is that you don't then need to update your bylaws quite as frequently, whereas others are a little bit more detailed. So. Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry, Jeremy, I just verified that, yes, that should be conspicuously posted in one or more designated locations at least 72 hours before such meeting. So, and there is, yes, a public notice of the time and place of the meeting schedule at least 1 week prior.
Okay.
Thereto shall be given to the news media and shall be conspicuously posted in one or more designated public locations. So whatever is in the
section 104?
that applies to us.
Yeah, it's fairly detailed, so I think it would be better to just refer to the law.
Yeah, I much prefer it in there so we don't have to change this.
Yes, and when we spoke
Yeah,
to
I
the
just
video
wanna
on
make sure
open
we-
government, they said if you reference
Yeah.
open meetings law, that will suffice. There's
Perfect.
no need to repeat what's in the law.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay. Section 3, these are not substantive changes. This is just drafting, try and make it a little bit clearer. Okay. Section 4, let's pause here for a moment. The law requires you to have a code of ethics, and you do have a code of ethics. We've proposed some updates to that document as well. And because the ABO also recommends having a conflict of interest policy that reflects certain provisions of the New York not-for-profit corporation law, we've built those into the policy, and it's going to be a single policy called Code of Ethics and Conflict of Interest Policy. We're going to be working separately with members of the governance committee to review that. It's in substantially final form, but it's not quite there yet. Okay, so this provision in the bylaws just calls it out to a reader that there is that policy. Okay, under order of business, I mean, this was just in conversations with the governance committee, reflecting what's actually happening in reality and also simplifying wherever possible. Okay. Section 6, probably worth talking about for a moment. I think so that board members have a meaningful opportunity to review proposed resolutions that will be considered at board meetings. We've said that whenever possible, the text of those resolutions will be circulated in advance. There's a few limited instances where it should be okay for a board member to propose a modification to a proposed resolution on the spot from the floor, but we generally, people want advance notice, and so we're kind of trying to avoid that unless there's a good reason for it. And we've set out a mechanism that I think strikes that balance well. And then you'll just see that the final sentence of that section 6 says that minutes of open meetings and any executive sessions will be taken in accordance with Section 106 of the Open Meetings Law, which again is fairly detailed, and so we think it's better to refer to the statute than try and bake that detail into this section. Okay.
And a lot of the open meetings law says that the board members get the minutes of the previous meeting 10 days before.
So if you scroll up a little bit to section 5, we talk about the agenda, right? So approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. I don't have the statute right in front of me, but Lada, what's your practice for circulating the minutes of the prior meeting in advance? And is that statutorily at 10 business days? Is that, go ahead.
Sorry. We typically send the draft minutes along with the board materials for the next board meeting. But the minutes must be ready within 2 weeks. The draft shall be ready within 2 weeks. Or if we have a transcript that satisfies the requirement of having the record of the meeting, So
Oh, a
once we have
transcript, right, a recording, okay.
We also, in addition to the minutes, we have a transcript too. Plus, we have a video recording, which also satisfies the requirements of the minutes. So we don't send them separate, and we typically have the draft with the internal draft. It's requested by public or the board members, we can provide it earlier.
Okay.
So, but to satisfy the requirement, we have a transcript available, I think, within a week. Or
Yeah,
within
when we
10
were
days.
doing it, we
But
didn't
2
have
weeks to draft the minutes, yes,
And we also have a video recording.
yes.
Okay. All right, on to section 7 then. Yeah, this just tracks the statute. Indicate the manner in which, right. Yeah, I mean, there's some instances where the bylaw language, I think, was just unnecessarily wordy or confusing or out of date. Okay, executive sessions, we just call out that there's a law on point here, and make reference to those sections of the law. Okay.
And I'm gonna ask, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be a pain on this, but things were different back when I was on. We were always told, you can have all the discussions you want in executive session, but you can never take a vote. We had to go back out, start the meeting again and do the vote and then adjourn.
No, you can take a
And that's
vote.
not the case?
You just can't vote. The section 105 says you can't vote on financial issues.
Yes.
You can vote on anything else.
You can vote on anything else in executive session and the public
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
have to know it?
Yeah, the executive meetings law 105.
Well, not
says you can vote
anything.
on
You can
anything.
only go into
Open meeting.
executive session for particular
Right.
items, and you can vote
Correct.
on those
And then
items
there
in the
is-
session.
Yeah, you can take a vote, yes, restated correctly, thank you. You can take a vote on whatever else you were there to meet about per the executive session, except for anything dealing with money.
Exactly.
Okay.
New statute since you were there, I guess.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to vote on anything. Anything we finished, if we were gonna vote on something in there, we had to go back out, call the meeting to order again, vote, and then adjourn the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at those sections of the statute and it's, it gives you it tells you what you're allowed to do and what you aren't, which is consistent with what Conway and others have been saying here. So, okay, designees, the commissioner and the director of budget can designate an officer or an employee to attend meetings on their behalf and have all the same voting rights and what have you as the commissioner or the director of budget would have. And just added some clarifying language that, of course, if the commissioner or director of budget are able to attend, then they're the ones who have those voting rights, not their representative. Okay, waiver of notice, I don't think we need to discuss this. This is just drafting clarifications. Okay, officers. Okay,
So there's
we
just
spent,
changes in officers.
Sorry,
There's
Lydia?
changes in officers. So I was just saying that there have been changes in officers, so we need to pay attention.
Yeah, I noticed that. I see secretary here, but we don't really have a position secretary, right? Doesn't the general counsel act as secretary?
General counsel acted as a secretary, yes.
Do we need to say that someplace? Yes, but this,
I think
this
So
would lead you to believe that there is a secretary
That's-
We
separate from
do.
the general counsel.
We do say that, we do address that. We say that the general, unless the board determines otherwise, the person who holds the position of general counsel will serve as secretary as well. So it leaves open the possibility that you could have two separate individuals. Right, yes, whoever is holding the mouse is pointing that out. So actually, if you don't mind, scroll up to part A. Just want to kind of give an overview because I think Lydia's right. This is a section that we spent a lot of time clarifying. Just as a general principle, we wanted to make clear that, you know, there are people who may be employees who have the word officer in their title. So for example, like a chief information security officer or a chief people officer. But we want to kind of distinguish that that doesn't make them an officer within the meaning of the bylaws. And the significance of someone being an officer within the meaning of the bylaws is that the board may have a say in appointing them or removing them. So we've spent some time with the governance committee talking about which positions should be mentioned and called out as officers within the meaning of the bylaws, and those are listed here. President/CEO, Treasurer, Chief Financial Officer, Chief Operating Officer, General Counsel, Secretary, and Internal Controls Officer. As for the Treasurer, I want to call this position out. We have recommended that, and your existing bylaws have a position called Treasurer. We have recommended keeping that, but making that a member of the board who would hold that board officer position of Treasurer, who would at a very high level, sort of on behalf of the board and as a representative of the board, serve as a check and balance on the management staff in charge of the financial matters. I know that represents a change, but we think that's a good practice in terms of checks and balances. And I'll summarize a couple of key points about those other roles if the person could scroll up a little bit, and then we can kind of go into the details a little bit more if we'd like. Okay. Internal Controls Officer is well, as I said a moment ago, the General Counsel would serve as the secretary and take minutes unless the board later determines otherwise. Internal Controls Officer is a position called for by statute, and so we've built that in to the bylaws. And the board can always elect or appoint other officers with whatever titles they want and say what their responsibilities are. Okay. And we've also made clear here at the last sentence of this part A, which I think is important, is that officers answer to the board. Okay. Part B gets into the president, CEO, and the treasurer roles, noting that they're appointed or elected by the board, whereas these other roles, the CFO, COO, GC, and internal controls officer, are appointed by the board, but on the recommendation or in consultation with the president, CEO. And I think this is just to ensure that the individual who holds that position of president or CEO has meaningful input into the key staff that will be working around the president and CEO. Okay. Okay.
The treasurer shall be a member of the board.
Yeah,
So this is the recommendation that CLM gave us, is that we have a separate board member that has oversight over the staff. So oversight over, in this case, it'd be Drew and the finance team. So as an extra check. So that's-
Yeah, and why don't now's probably a good
that.
time to skip down to the description of what the treasurer does. We can come back to where we were, but
Okay.
I think this helps make the point that it is not a position where the person would have to be involved in the day-to-day management of the finances. Yeah, exactly. So oversee and monitor the corporation's finances on behalf of the board, right? So I
in
know I
our
interrupted
previous
someone, so
bylaws, we actually did have
Mm-hmm.
a treasurer that was separate, but what we did in practice was we just consolidated the treasurer and CFO
Mm-hmm.
as an organization. But in the previous bylaws, the treasurer was separate. So it's not,
I don't care if it's separate within the organization, but can we just put another person on the board?
no, we're not putting another person on the
So
board.
I'm not sure.
What we're
Somebody
doing-
from the board.
Somebody from the board will be,
Isn't that what director of the budget is there for?
No, you're talking about the budget office?
Yeah.
like,
Aren't they the
no.
ones that are supposed to be overseeing our CFOs and our treasurers and everybody?
Just by the enabling legislation that was set up back when REAC was founded, they felt they needed to have a permanent board seat on the REAC board, but that's not the function of being the treasurer necessarily. It could be,
could be.
but it doesn't have to
It would seem
be.
to me to make the most sense. That
Yeah.
would be the most, wouldn't that be the
It-
most
it-
appropriate person?
yeah, it could be.
Not just the
Could be.
budget overall, but not all finance and accounts of receipts and disbursements of the corporation.
Mhm.
I don't think the division of budget will be going into
Yeah.
this level of detail on
Well,
all
I
the
don't-
books and accounting.
I don't know the treasurer would be either. I
Yeah.
don't think
Right.
No, the
would go-
treasurer ensure full and accurate accounts of receipts and disbursements are kept and ensure the issuance of receipts. So ensure proper maintenance of the books and accounts and the sound accounting procedures and financial operations.
But at a high level, not the.
Yeah, I
people,
think
that was what I-
Exactly.
True, and the controller was doing that, and then.
That was controller.
Yeah.
In Rick's case, it was controller who
Mhm.
was performing duties of the treasurer in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is ultimately a change of practice that the board should consider. We think it's good for checks and balances. We're open to, tweaking this language that we're looking at right now if it feels too, if it somehow implies that the treasurer would be more involved on a day-to-day basis. I think we've already made those changes with the lead-in language that says oversee and monitor. That modifies everything that comes after it in A through D. I'm moving us a little bit because I have Lauren and I both have to drop off at 6:30.
I have a question about the controller. In other words, you're saying this person would be overseeing, but isn't this normally done by a controller?
Well, I don't know that REAC has a controller at the
We
moment.
don't have one. No, we don't have one. But that person would be the one normally overseeing the finances or a check and balances for the CFO.
Well, so thank you for the comment. There is a CFO. There is not a controller at the moment. So I think it would only be more indirect or confusing to say that the treasurer, which is already a position in your bylaws, will act as controller and oversee the CFO. And I think we're trying to cut out the indirect nature of that. I mean, you don't have a controller at the moment. And so I don't want to say that in the bylaws, and I'm not sure there's a benefit of saying that the treasurer will act as controller and do these things. But please let me know if I'm not quite, responding to your suggestion or understanding your point.
No, I don't think that, I think the board, well, whatever member of the board that takes on this position, I think that is a lot of work.
Well, and that's another reason why I think removing act as controller makes sense here. We really don't want, in most, you may be involved with other nonprofit boards, and the typical officer positions are, a chair, a treasurer, and a secretary. And the treasurer has the overall role of overseeing finances, but they are not involved in the day-to-day management or expected to be responsible as a CFO would be. It's just you've designated one person on the board to be focused on finances.
So it basically would be the auditor.
when we talked about this and these changes, Faye,
Basically,
the consideration was that like potentially the chair of the audit committee would act in this role. They're on the board, they're a board member, and they could be the chair of the audit committee / treasurer, because this is really just a reporting function until they discover there's an issue. It's not like a day-to-day oversight role.
Right.
It's just
And
the way it's written seems like it's a lot, but I think it's it's more high level.
Yeah, I mean, another way to, I agree with that. Another way to say it is that board members are fiduciaries and have this overall responsibility at a very high level for overseeing the organization's finances, even though everyone knows that they're not involved in the day-to-day management. And so having one member of the board who can keep the board abreast and have that as part of their responsibilities, just like a secretary has the responsibilities to ensure notices are given and meeting minutes are taken. We think that's a good practice. And again, if there's something about this language that implies a more detailed day-to-day role or responsibility, I think the board should discuss this, and we're open to scaling it back or adding language to make sure it's clear that this person is not a member of the finance staff and not expected to be.
So actually, I think that the monitor is good, because they're monitoring the
Right.
day-to-day, but not necessarily on a day-to-day basis. They're
Right, so that
reviewing
is,
it eventually, but not necessarily on that day.
right, that's, if you
Right.
scroll up just a tiny bit, you'll see the language that Lydia is talking about. Oversee
So
and
shall
monitor
oversee and monitor
on behalf of the board, right?
on behalf of the board.
My concern here is that the board members are not being paid, and it's extra work, because secretary and general counsel is a paid position. But treasurer is kind of a volunteer to do a lot of work and not even being paid for that. That's another thing that
It's either a real job or it isn't, and.
yes, because it's a job.
It's
not
really
just
doing nothing,
monitoring,
just high
because
level, then
people
I
are
think
getting
it's redundant
paid
with the
for this.
budget director, and if it's a real job, then I think
Mhm.
it shouldn't be, one of the other board members.
Yeah, we
So
need to
you think
consider
it
this.
should be paid? That's what
No,
you're
the board member, that's the
We don't
point.
have that
If it's the board member, that includes a lot of responsibilities. The person who will be a treasurer, he will do extra work, and this person will not be compensated because he's an independent director, and he cannot be compensated.
Okay, so
I can
I've
see
been
many
trying to look for
I can see errors
What
because the
did you
person,
say?
I can see the treasurer not having time to be as diligent as we would want them to be, because if they're gonna look for errors or to keep the CFO or checking, you would really need someone who's really on the job.
Yeah, and I think that would be like a paid employee, like a controller or something like that. I think we need to, I mean, we could end this sentence at section 6 could simply say the treasurer shall be a member of the board and on behalf of the board shall oversee and monitor the corporation's finances, period. We don't need to say anything more than that. I'm getting the sense that A, B, C, and D are implying a more active role than is intended.
So you just want to delete it?
Delete it, or Part D says in general perform all duties incident to the office of treasurer. We see that a lot as well. Scroll down a tiny bit. Right, that's a general comment. All duties incident to the office of treasurer. Right, we could just include that at the end of the lead-in. So it's up to the governance committee, but if the recommendation is that we end the sentence at and not have A through D, then we're fine with that. And again, I
I'm
just
okay
wanted
with
to,
that.
I know that REAC is unique in certain ways, and it's a big, complex organization, and the idea that some volunteer board member is going to oversee finances unpaid seems like a lot, but everything the board does is a lot in order to fulfill their fiduciary
Correct.
duties, and board members are not charged with being
Allowed to get
experts.
paid.
Well, right, and
Yeah,
the
this is all
board
correct.
already oversees the affairs of the organization, including things like cybersecurity and data privacy, but that doesn't mean they need to be a cybersecurity expert or a data privacy expert or an accounting expert. But someone on behalf of the board should serve in this role of treasurer that's a check and a balance and should be, asking questions from time to time and a little bit more familiar with finances and financial statements of REOC than others. It's just a good practice, and that's our recommendation, but it's really up for the board to decide.
Yeah, I like thank you for that, Jeremy, and I think that I like the recommendation here, but I want to be sensitive to the time to make sure we maximize you while we have you.
Yeah.
If we can yeah.
Okay,
But
good.
I also like the recommendation as well. Megan, do you have any problem with the recommendation of just eliminating A, B, C, and D? Megan?
Oh, you're asking me? Oh,
Yeah.
no,
Megan,
I don't.
not Dave, Megan.
Yeah, that's fine.
No
Okay,
problem.
so, yeah,
Okay.
Lauren, if you could just eliminate A, B, C, and D, according to what Jeremy just said, that'd be wonderful, and let's move on. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right, down to the CFO. These are pretty general descriptions, and the chief operating officer, pretty general descriptions of the role. Same with the GC. I mean, I don't think we need to spend time reading those descriptions. The internal controls officer description just references the section of the public authority laws that describe their duties. And then section 11, sort of, this is saying that the board, if it wishes down the road, it could adopt a resolution saying that their approval is required for hiring or termination of certain staff positions, even beyond the officers that are listed in that first section that we looked at. I don't think the changes to section 12 are substantive. So let's move on to Article 5. I don't think any of this really needs to be highlighted. You all have this black line, so if you have questions, you can ask. Section 3 there is just updated to make this work. Sorry, the end of section 3. Checks signed by the CFO or by the president to make sure that you have someone who can sign these instruments. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, I think the next section for us to talk about is probably committees. So we can scroll past indemnification. There aren't any substantive changes there. Okay, all right, so it's 6:18. I have another 12 minutes and happy to talk through committees, but Lydia, and as chair, is that how would that be the best way to use the rest of the time?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think there are any other substantive changes other than the committees. So I think
Okay.
we'll just major on the committees and call it a day, and then let you guys go, so thank you so much. But, yeah, let's
Sure.
keep on going.
Okay. Okay, good. Some of this is just a function of the bylaws being 15 years old at this point, and so we've now made reference to the whoever's scrolling, can you scroll up to section 1? To the Operations Advisory Committee and Real Estate Development Advisory Committee, just so this matches current practice. Okay, election and term of office, section 2. We've kind of, based on conversations with the governance committee, we wanted to add a mechanism that allowed board members, once they are elected or appointed as such, to have an opportunity to express their preference as to a committee assignment, and to the extent possible, to have those committee assignments be made within 90 days after they've been appointed. special circumstances will certainly arise, and but this gives a sort of a target to aim for. We make clear that yeah, we make clear that committee members serve at the pleasure of the board. You know, I think terms on committees are usually coterminous with the board service term. So we've just added that. Okay, let's keep going to section. Okay, section 3, I don't think we need to discuss. All right, section 4, governance committee. The statute says what the governance committee, you know, says you have to have a governance committee and what it needs to do. So a lot of this just tracks the statute, and it already did in your 2010, your existing bylaws. We have a little sentence here. Yeah, 2 additions. In the middle of the paragraph, it says that the governance committee, scroll up a touch, can appoint non-board members to meet the minimum requirements described in this section 4. That also comes directly from the statute. So the statute kind of has a mechanism if you're unable to meet the minimum number of independent directors. It gives you an out. It gives you the ability to appoint non-board members. And then the end of this section just acknowledges that the authority's budget office has put out model charters, and so we've said in these bylaws that you know, on the advice of the governance committee, that that the board will adopt charters for each committee. This comes up in the next committee too. Okay, audit committee is the other committee that's required by law, and we've just tracked the language of the statute here and just, you know, streamlined it a little bit as drafting matter. Okay, we say here that the treasurer, as a member of the board, can serve on the audit committee. Again, that's kind of getting into that discussion about the possibility that the chair of the audit committee would be the treasurer. And of course, that means that the treasurer can't be paid. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, committee advisors. I think this is worth taking a minute or two on. Recognizing the importance of non-committee members who have experience that can be useful to a committee. We've added this mechanism to make it explicit that someone can be asked to serve as a non-voting advisor. That could be for a single meeting, if there's a subject that's coming up at a particular meeting, or for multiple meetings, or even on an ongoing basis, as long as the committee as a whole has some input and is all on the same page and on board with bringing someone on to have that, you know, quasi-official position. And we added in this provided however portion 3 conditions that we recommend. And the first is part A, and this kind of comes from ABO guidance too. You know, it's important that the person serving in this role is independent, and if we may want to require them to certify their independence before they take on this role. Part B is that I think it's important, we think it's important that if someone is in this role, it's just clear to folks that aren't on the committee what their role is and what their role is not. And so we've recommended making clear at the outset what capacity that person is speaking or attending in. And then lastly, we recommend here in Part C that, you know, the decision be revisited by the governance committee once a year. And, you know, the person's invitation to serve as a non-voting advisor can go on indefinitely, but as the committee as a whole will get together at least once a year and make that decision consciously and deliberately. Any questions on that section 6?
Well, this is totally new.
Yes, this is a new
Yeah,
section.
this is a total new addition to the bylaws. And I think definitely the entire board is going to have to talk about it.
Okay, and we will. Okay. But thank you very
Okay.
much. And that language comes from where? Did we just make it out of whole cloth, or did we take it from any other
Well-
legislation or guidelines?
The independence is from the public authorities law, but the rest
Yeah.
of it is suggested outside
Yeah.
council.
That's right.
Yeah.
And just to kind of level set in terms of context, I mean, we all know that any member of the public can attend a committee meeting, and I think this is an instance where you want to have someone have a non-board member have a little bit more formal role on an ongoing basis. And I think that's happening in practice, and I think it's a good idea to make sure there's buy-in from all members of the committee before that role is kind of formalized. And so that's what this is about.
Thank you so much. Any other comments? I think the rest of the bylaws is, I don't know. if you-
Standard.
It's standard.
Standard, right.
But this is
Yes.
a big change, and then the other part that we had discussed is also the big change. So that's what I wanted to make sure that we focused on it and we reviewed it, and if anyone has any comment right now to say something, and this will be hopefully forwarded to the board within, hopefully, Jeremy, maybe the next day, if we just take out A, B, C, and D?
That is the only change we've heard, take out A, B, and C, and D of the treasurer position. We'll do that ASAP. We are working on this memo to go to the board, which was requested of us to have a kind of high level, maybe 3-page max memo focusing on the most significant points. And we have a little bit more work to do on that. So we're aiming to have that done by Friday. So we can send you the revised bylaws by the end of the day tomorrow. And it's okay from our perspective if you'd like to circulate those to the board, clean and marked against the existing bylaws. We'll send you the red line too. But we're not going to have the memo for you tomorrow. We'll have that for you on Friday. And that can be forwarded separately to the board.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Jeremy.
Sounds good.
And
Thank you.
Lauren,
That
thank you.
sounds fantastic. So, once you get that to us by the end of the day tomorrow, then you'll get it, Lada? Hopefully,
we'll
then
forward
you
it,
can
yes.
circulate it to the rest of the board, and just in that email, just mention that, they'll be sending another high-level, like bullet-pointed major changes the day after. So, thank you. I really, really appreciate, Jeremy, that you showed up, and thank you, Lauren, if you're there. I don't know if you're there, but yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much
Really.
for allowing us to join your meeting. And we can talk offline about this, but if you feel like a similar presentation would be useful at the board meeting, we can do that, or a shorter presentation too, but up to you. So we're going to drop off now. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you,
Bye.
thank you, Jeremy, thank you,
Thank you.
Lauren.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Any comments, anybody, comments?
Oh,
You-
looks
I
good.
just think you guys have to figure out that treasurer thing, because I could see maybe Howard Pallavi as chair of the audit committee being in that role, but
Yeah.
it's either a lot of work or it isn't. And so if it's a lot of work, then gotta get and say it. If it isn't, then I see it as being redundant with the director from the budget office.
Okay.
Well, he's been doing that anyway. He has
Yeah.
been doing,
That's what I mean. He has been doing that, so I see that as kind of redundant. But, it's up to you guys. That's just my opinion.
So we'll discuss it. And the thing is, it is a recommendation from outside council that we do this. So that apparently it's best practices. So if it's best practices, we have to put it before the board.
Right.
Saying that it's best practices.
Mhm.
So, and if it's best practices, we have the fiduciary responsibility to comply with best practices.
Agreed.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
Agreed.
that's it. Anything else? Any other comments?
So the
None
draft
from
is
me.
Okay. Lada?
No, Megan said something. Megan?
She said not for
No-
me.
Said not
no
for me.
comment.
No,
I said no, I have no comments.
Okay.
The committee at this stage can make recommendations to the board if you're satisfied.
So
and you think there is no-
I'm satisfied.
Yeah.
Is everybody satisfied? Megan, are you satisfied with what we have right here, less the A, B, and C, and D?
Yeah, I'm fine sharing that.
Are
It
you?
looks good to me. Yeah.
So.
I just
I'm
one thing, Lydia, I just don't know if the full board will be ready to approve for next week, though. That's all.
Yeah, I get that. But I think it's really important that we present it to the full board.
Oh, yes, no
So that they'll
question.
have a
Yes,
chance.
definitely. I just want to set the expectation that you may not get a ratification next week. That's all.
Yeah,
Approval.
story of my life.
When's the next board meeting?
April 10th.
April 10th.
It's
Okay.
next Thursday.
I think definitely
Okay.
for May, for sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So then that'll be a full year.
Mhm.
So anyways, so just quick, because we've already said that we all approve, I'm gonna put it forth before the board
Sorry.
in the governance committee update, that we're gonna put this forward for ratification, and that we will have discussion.
Yeah, I would say not ratification, for approval,
For approval.
because we're not signing anything yet. Ratifications, we already move forward with it. We're just recommending to the board to approve the bylaw.
Mhm.
Okay. Whatever the proper process is,
So it will be the part of your governance committee report.
put it forward as, for approval. And so everybody hopefully will get a copy of this, hopefully the red line and the clean version.
Yes.
And in my governance committee update, I'll say that we took the vote, which we did, and we're putting this forward for approval,
Mhm.
okay?
Along with the memo from outside counsel.
Along with the memo from
Yeah.
outside counsel. I mean, we don't really have to approve that, it's just
No, that's
more
just,
information.
that's for our benefit.
Yeah, that's for our benefit.
Yes.
So I will say in the meeting that, hopefully they will have already gotten the bylaws, latest draft that we've approved, and we're putting forward for approval, and also the synopsis
Mhm.
that, outside counsel will provide.
Yeah.
Has not provided yet, but hopefully by that point will have provided. Okay?
I just want to clarify,
Yeah.
the synopsis that outside counsel provides is a legal memo intended for the board members,
Okay.
as opposed to the draft of the bylaw.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Okay? All right.
Great.
Are there any other things that we need to talk about it today? If not,
Mhm.
we can adjourn.
Yay.
All right.
Anything?
I think this must be the shortest one.
Yeah,
I've been to.
absolutely the shortest one.
So, okay, move to adjourn.
All right,
Do I have a
so
second?
moved.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, great work, everybody.
Aye, we're all done. We're adjourned. Thank you so much
Oh
for
my God,
joining,
thank-
everybody.
Thanks, everyone. I'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Thank you,
Bye.